I'm Olivia with the Fort Worth Public Library, and today we're celebrating Pie Day! In honor of Pie Day, I have an easy, kid-friendly recipe to share with you: triple berry pie. All of the ingredients can be prepared by littles, but don't forget to ask your grown-up for help when you use the oven. As much as I love pie, and I think every occasion is a good reason to make some, it does call for some important skills. If I want it to turn out right, I have to read the instructions, measure the ingredients, and combine them in the right order. This means practicing my reading, math, and science skills. We're going to make pie crust and then add fruit filling. I'm using frozen fruit, but fresh will work too. I picked this triple berry blend because the fruit is ready to go directly into the pie, no peeling, cutting, or chopping necessary. So now let's make sure we have everything we need to make the pie. Make sure you wash your hands thoroughly with soap and warm water before touching any of the food. I put my hair up too, that way it stays clean and out of the way. The next thing to do is grab our ingredients, measuring cups, and mixing bowls and head over to the kitchen. For this recipe, you'll need these tools: 2 butter knives, 1 fork, kitchen scale, mixing bowl, rolling pin, 9-inch pie plate, and optional rimmed baking sheet to protect against oven spills. And these ingredients: flour, butter, ice water, salt, sugar, frozen fruit, and tapioca starch or cornstarch. You'll also need to ask your grown-up for help with the oven when it's time to bake the pie. Pie crust is as easy as 3, 2, 1. I'm measuring all of the ingredients by weight because that's the most accurate way to do it. Flour is one of those tricky ingredients that can end up being really different if you're not careful with how you measure it. Let's start by putting the bowl on the scale and zeroing it out with this button labeled tare. See how it says 0? Now we're ready to measure out 12 ounces of flour. Lucky for us, we don't have to measure the butter. It comes in pre-measured and labeled sticks. We'll need 2 sticks because each stick is 4 ounces and 4 plus 4 equals 8. Last, we'll need to measure 4 ounces of ice water. The water doesn't need to be perfect, and that's okay. Since we're having some dry weather, I might need a little more. If the weather was wet, it might be less. Pie crust is pretty forgiving, so don't worry if it isn't exact. Just make sure the ingredients are cold, especially the butter. Now that we have everything measured, here comes the important part: how to mix it together. The way you make pie crust is special. I'm going to start by cutting up the sticks of butter into little pieces. This will help when we mix it with the flour and a pinch of salt. I'm going to cut the mixture together with 2 butter knives to keep everything really cold, and mix as I go to make sure I don't leave any huge chunks of butter. By the end, we want the flour and salt to be pretty mixed up with all the butter, and the gravelly looking mixture should have pieces the size of a sweet pea or smaller. You can also use your hands with a pinching motion to make the butter into smaller pieces, but it's more difficult to keep everything cold. We don't want the butter to melt until it goes into the oven because all those little balls of butter covered with flour will make the flakes in the crust. Great job! Now it's time to add the ice-cold water. We want to be pretty gentle with this part so the finished crust is tender and yummy. Pour the water in a little at a time and mix it with your hands, pushing it together against the bottom and lower sides of the bowl. Make sure the bowl doesn't get away from you when you do this. You want to make sure that there aren't any big dry spots, and you don't want there to be a super sticky wet spot either. The dough should just hold together like this. If you see some dry spots, pull the dough apart a little and press any wet spots you find to the dry bits. Gently does it. Once it all comes together in a ball, cover it with plastic wrap or a lid and then put it in the fridge to chill for at least 15 minutes or longer. While we wait for the dough to chill, go get your fruit, cornstarch or tapioca starch, and sugar. We'll need about 16 ounces or 3 cups of fruit, a pinch of salt, 0.6 ounces or about 2 tablespoons of tapioca or cornstarch, and 4 ounces or about half a cup of white sugar. Mix the white sugar and pinch of salt with tapioca starch until it's fully combined with no lumps. Toss the berries with the sugar mixture and set it aside. The bowl I picked is a little too small, but that's okay. I can combine it more when we put it in the pie crust. Great! Now it's time to roll out both of the crusts. We made enough for a 9-inch pie with a top crust and a bottom crust, so I'll divide this in half and roll out one half at a time. I put flour down on the clean countertop and over the rolling pin to keep it from sticking. Add more flour if yours is still sticking. When you roll it, try to make it even all the way across and make sure it's big enough to cover the bottom of the dish. That's the most important part to get right. Now, pie is delicious, but what does it have to do with Pi Day? Well, today is 3/14 or March 14th, and 3.14 is another ratio. It tells us how big a circle is around compared to the straight across measurement, like this. The pie dough recipe is based on a ratio, so it means that no matter what size of measurement I'm using, the relationship of the pie dough ingredients to one another stays the same. I could do 3 ounces of flour, 2 ounces of butter, and 1 ounce of ice water, or I could do 3 pounds of flour, 2 pounds of butter, and 1 pound of ice water. In this recipe, we used 12 ounces of flour, 8 ounces of butter, and 4 ounces of water. If we simplify all of those as fractions, it comes out to 12 over 4 equals 3, 8 divided by 4 equals 2, and 4 divided by 4 equals 1. The 3-to-1 ratio keeps all the ingredients in this simple pie dough in balance, and that's where the name comes from. When you're rolling out the top crust, if it turns out a funny shape, cut it into stripes and just put the stripes on top. If you want, you can use cookie cutters to cut out shapes in the top crust. I'm going to cut out a pie shape on top as a steam vent. If you make a top crust, you do have to cut slits in it so the steam can get out. Pie bakers, it's time to assemble! The pie, that is. Now that the crusts are rolled out, let's get ready for the filling. Before we add the triple berry filling, go ask your grown-up to preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and have oven mitts nearby to help you put the pie in the oven safely. Okay, let's add the filling in neatly with a spoon. Now the filling is added, let's place the top crust on top. Use some water to get your fingers wet and trace the outside perimeter of your crust so we can seal the top and bottom of the pie together. Press gently with your fingers to help it stay in place. Next, use your butter knife to trim off the extra crust hanging off the side, and use the tines of a fork to smush the edges together to make a seal like this. I'm going to put my pie on a baking sheet to make sure the filling doesn't spill into the bottom of the oven. When the oven is hot enough, open the oven door, put on oven mitts, pick up the pie in the tray with both hands, and carefully put it inside. Close the oven and set a timer for 50 minutes. And now we wait. The way to tell if the pie is done is to make sure that it's boiling in the center. After 50 minutes, check it for bubbling in the middle. If it doesn't bubble, it's not ready. You can ask your grown-up to help you put some aluminum foil gently over the top of your pie if the crust is getting a little burned. Cook for about 10 to 15 more minutes or until it's bubbling all the way through. Try not to open the oven until you see the middle of the filling bubbling. When it's done, use oven mitts to carefully pull the pie out of the oven and turn the oven off. Now all that's left is to wait for it to cool so you can eat. Thanks for celebrating Pie Day with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye!